Welcome to Rising Woman Leaders. I'm your host, Meredith Rom, and I believe the time has come for women to share their gifts, their voice, and their stories. I love seeing women spiritually and financially empowered, thriving in their life's work, and doing what they love every day. I've gathered a community of women living their dreams to tell us their stories and inspire us to step into more courage, self-love, and feminine leadership. If you like this podcast, use the hashtag Rising Woman Leaders, follow me on Instagram at Meredith Rom, and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com to get all the new and inspiring content. Now get cozy with a journal and a cup of tea. I hope you enjoy today's show. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to let you know that I recently opened the doors to a 3-month mentorship coaching program with me called the Diamond Mentorship. Last year, I became curious about the energetic qualities of a diamond. Just like any gemstone that comes from the earth, a diamond has a specific frequency and divine qualities used for healing. I looked it up on Google and discovered a diamond represents clarity, self-love, self-respect, contact with the divine, faith, purity, endurance, beauty, abundance, and an ability to reflect light. At the same time, when I began exploring and working with the medicine of the diamond, I completed 2 practitioner trainings that were inviting me to heal on a much deeper level than I ever had before. I began practicing the modalities of EFT, the Emotional Freedom Technique, and Matrix Reimprinting. First, I began receiving many sessions on myself. I went on to participate in several intensive trainings, and eventually I began bringing this work into sessions with my private clients. Suddenly, the work I was doing with women was going much deeper. I began holding space for women to heal memories of abuse and trauma. I began uncovering stories and limiting beliefs that were holding these women back from shining in their true brilliance. I watched as layers of shame, fear, guilt, and limiting beliefs began to lift. I realized the deeper I allowed myself to heal and to feel my own pain, the more layers were being unveiled with my clients. Then I remembered the metaphor of the diamond, and I realized when a diamond is dug up from the earth, it is not all shiny and brilliant. It's actually covered in dark rock. It needs to be polished, nurtured, and formed into what we know as a diamond. Just like us, all of those dark parts need to be seen and loved before shining in our true brilliance. Every diamond is unique, just like you. There is a unique essence, a combination of divine qualities that are distinctly one of a kind. We need you to shine at your brightest because your unique essence can literally never be recreated. I've had to do the inner work to be where I am now, living in alignment with my purpose and being a light for others on their path. I've needed to address a lifetime of my own fears and core limiting beliefs, and I've been able to do this level of work with these tools, and I am so grateful to now be sharing this with you. So the Diamond Mentorship is a 3-month program for you to claim and embody your unique brilliance. Untether yourself from limiting beliefs that are holding you back from shining at your brightest. We'll be diving deep into rewiring these core beliefs with EFT and Matrix Reimprinting. So this program is an invitation to very high-level priestess work, and it is for you if you are ready to address core wounds, limiting beliefs, and past trauma, locate memories that formed these belief structures to heal them, to step into the most brilliant version of yourself. I know you don't want to be stuck earning the same income forever, or be single forever, or be hidden away behind a computer forever, or be facing whatever is the biggest issue in your life at this moment forever. You want to grow. You want to be like those people who share themselves on social media or on the stage or on the book cover with confidence. You want the big house or the big paycheck or both, or you want to fall in love, or you want to be more generous or full of trust and in the flow with the universe. I want you to know that you are here to fully embrace whatever it is you desire and to actually live out those desires. All of this is possible for you, and I'm here to help you uncover whatever is holding you back from being this most brilliant version of yourself. So if you want to learn more, there are only a few more days left in enrollment, but you can go to meredithrom.com/diamond. That's meredithrom.com/diamond, and we'll include a link in the show notes. Thank you for taking the time to be here, to be part of our community and this podcast. I hope you enjoy today's show. I'm here today with Maga J. Ayala. She is a divine feminine leadership coach that activates highly sensitive women to come alive in their desire, lead with confidence, and remember how to live in alignment with their menstrual cycles in order to birth their creative businesses into the world. As a sound and energy practitioner, Maga also magically weaves her voice work and energy healing into the women's circles she facilitates that guide women to reconnect to their bodies, voices, and their unique feminine spirituality. She believes that all women are radiant and strives to support them to shine in all she does. Thanks for being here, Maga.
Yay, I'm so happy to be here. I'm feeling really centered in my heart. And so it's just a joy to start my day this way.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so a few months ago, you interviewed me for your Visionary Women's Council Summit, which was really fun. And now I get to be here on the other side, interview you, and hear how life has been. I've been following your journey on social media these past few months, and it sounds like a lot of shifts have been happening. Choosing to separate from a partner, having some amazing breakthroughs in deciding to cut off your hair. And I just want to hear about that journey and just where you're at and what this has been like.
Yeah. Oh my God. So much juiciness to go into all of that. And the theme for my year this year is expansion. And in a lot of ways, there's been a lot of decisions that I've made to be able to support that. And so the transition out of my partnership was a mutual decision that we made together. And it was one of the most beautiful and, sad times to be able to go through that. And I really came away from this experience of uncoupling, really understanding what it meant to truly love somebody, even as you are, coming apart. And there's this commitment to me, and we held this commitment to each other that we wanted to leave each other much better than we found each other, and come as gracefully as we came apart. We wanted to do that as well, gracefully, as gracefully as we came together, gracefully coming apart. And so, that has really opened me up to a whole new level of just connection to myself and trusting myself and making decisions that feel really bold. And in the recent decision that I made to shave my head, there was this, actually you kind of came to mind, after I got this vision, because I know this is part of your journey as well. So I love the connection that I share with a lot of bold women that have made this decision by me, following this intuition. But I received this message to be able to, in order to come into greater alignment with myself and my mission in serving women, that I really needed to make a big offering of myself. And after transitioning out of my relationship, there was these like, habitual patterns that I thought I had like, like cleared out and I had addressed in some regard in regards to like going into another relationship and doing that whole thing of like just jumping from one partner to the next. And so for me, it feels like that pattern and these patterns that have been coming up for me, that for me to really integrate, were coming up for me to be able to get clear, so that I could get clear on the path that I'm taking and what I'm here to do, and what, which relationships can support that sort of blossoming, and what relationships don't. And so for me, it was a personal choice as a signifier, like sharing with the world that like I'm all in, like I'm all in. This is my service, and living my purpose is so important to me. And so for me, it was kind of like an offering that I made up to the altar of life, to be able to just show my commitment. And because of that, I feel so free. Like I just feel so I feel so like there's this newfound sense of trust, like a deep, even deeper layer of trust that I have with myself to listen and to listen with discernment, and also to be able to trust myself to follow these intuitions and the messages that I get. And so there's been a lot of growth because of that. And so I feel like this year is it's staying true to that intention that I set for expansion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a huge statement of, I am not afraid of life. Mm-hmm. Telling life, I'm not afraid of you. Mm-hmm. And often we get those intuitive pulls, mm-hmm. and guidance, and it can be scary to actually follow through on them. Yeah. But I know, and I'm sure you do too, it's like brings you right into exactly what you need, mm-hmm. the greatest expansion. Mm-hmm. I feel too, this year is a lot about expansion. Mm-hmm. Finally, just like letting down the guards of whatever's been holding that back.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. Well, one of them was about partnership. And I imagine there are people out there listening who may be wondering whether or not to stay in a certain relationship. Mm. And I'm curious, like for you, what was that moment of like, okay, yeah, I this isn't right, or I need to make a change. Mm. And also helping other women decipher, how do we know when it's time to move on if you get the feeling like things might not be working? And also, how do you know like when to stay and to really keep showing up?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. And I've been sitting with this a lot. And in my experience of this recent uncoupling, we had been talking about it for a couple of months, off and on. And in this relationship, we talked about everything. There's like not one aspect that we couldn't, there wasn't a place that we couldn't go in what we talked about. And so I feel really grateful for that in that sense. And so it was already in conversation because we had been seeing, very similar dynamics that were leaving us feeling much more like distracted from what we needed to do. And so our relationship was feeling like, at least in my experience, from my perspective, for me, it felt like, I was placing my attention on focusing on the relationship and because of that, other parts of my life were like, I wasn't showing up as strongly as I really wanted to, for my business, for my clients and things like this. And I was showing up, but it just, to a level of which I really wanted to be there. I just felt like my relationship was taking more focus away from these things. And so that sort of was a really big signal for me. And in a lot of ways too, I felt really supported. So it was really hard. It was like a hard decision to make because and I felt like because of my partner's influence and support, I was able to, really step into my leadership and things like this. And so it was a really difficult decision to make. And I would say that I think that's probably the biggest marker that women can look for is this relationship, or is my focus, or is my time and energy going into the places that are sustainable right now, or for me, because I think that was the biggest marker for myself. And just in this experience, it was my partner that propositioned this. And to me, I felt really, at first I felt a little reluctant. And, I said to him that, I don't feel it in my body like that's something that I want to do, because I suppose there's a lot of attachments. There's a lot of attachments that I had to the relationship. And but because I really trust him, I said to him that, because I really trust you, I'm gonna, just give me some time and I can be there with you. Like I can be in that space. And so I was able to really surrender. And so I came back in that time to feel it in my body that this was a decision I wanted to make. I came back and I was like really contemplating all the things that we were experiencing in our relationship. And I was like weighing, the pros and cons and things like this. And so that was really helpful for me to feel clear in my decision to uncouple with him. So yeah, I think that it takes a lot of surrendering, and also care to, in the end, to make decisions for yourself that feel good, that are going to support you in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Something came to my mind that was a decision I made a couple years ago. And the insight came to me very clearly when I was thinking about publishing the book that I published last summer. Mm-hmm. I had the insight that, like, if I don't do this, mm-hmm. something is going to happen to like untether me from anything that's holding me back from doing this. And one of those things probably being the relationship. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I made my commitment to, like, yeah, I need to stay true to this idea, or this purpose, this mission, this idea that was gifted to me in a way, because I could see the link of, like, if I'm not fully devoted in my life's work, my soul's work on this, in this time, in this life, then like anything that's preventing that is going to have to fall away at some point. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so important in relationships for us to not lose ourselves, and to stay true to those things we really want to birth in this life. And yeah, it can be very hard if suddenly we're needing to funnel more and more of our energy into mm-hmm. just keeping things afloat than really going out there and sharing the work we want to share.
Yeah. And something that you talked about just now was about, like seeing what, how things can like open up even greater. Like it inspired this idea that how opening up to that possibility can just open new doors. And so frees up a lot of our energy to be able to give.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I know a lot of your work now that you're feeling so called to really share and to stand in your power in is around women and their feminine cycles and their own rhythms. I'd love to just hear a little bit about living in alignment with our cycles, how you support women, what you see, are some of the women's struggles that you work with, any of that.
Yeah. It's my favorite topic to talk about. Well, maybe I can start with sharing a little bit about my journey and then how that informed like what I share now. So I started I devoted myself to my healing journey about 5 years ago and really started diving into the healing arts. And somewhere along my journey, I realized that, this concept of being a woman was mostly just lived in my head. And so there was a lot of initiations that I experienced, so to speak, in my life that kind of brought me closer and closer to this path. One of them was a very toxic relationship that I left, where it was mutually toxic and very abusive. And so it prompted me to take a look at, what beliefs I was holding about my self-worth as a woman. And so that was a really big catalyst for me to dive into like yoga, meditation, and then later I found women's work, like tantric work it all feels synchronistic and in divine timing that it happened in the way that it did. And so it started taking me closer and closer to this path. And then as I was like sitting with these tantric teachers and divine feminine mentors that I had, I was going through my own journey with my womb and trying to understand what my relationship to my womb was like. And there was a medicine journey that I took about 3 years ago or so. Yeah, 3 years ago. And in that journey, I asked, like, what does it mean to be a woman? Like, what does that mean to me? And I had been asking this question for a while now, but I just wanted to get this deeper understanding. And what became illuminated for me in that journey was a lot of body pain, like I had a very physical experience and seeing where my body pain was. And the predominant pain that showed up for me was in my womb. And it was on fire. It was like inflamed. And I really became attuned to the pain that was living there. And it was because I had an IUD in place, birth control IUD, and it was a copper IUD. And I literally felt it like tearing the sides of my uterus. And I felt like I wanted to take it out. And the message that I received from that experience was that in order to really fully embrace being a woman, I have to embrace and align myself with the power of my womb. And so that's what I did. And I went into, I dove deeper into sacred sexuality work, and also became trained in red tent tradition to understand more about women's mysteries and that sort of thing. And so later, I once I started sharing my service more in like women's circles and sharing healing work with women, it revolved around womb healing, because a lot of the women that I ended up seeing, it was energy healing that I was providing for people. And the women that I was seeing ended up just like, it was an it's an intuitive process that I follow. And so the energy work that we'd be doing would revolve around the womb. And so I started offering more womb healing, like energy healing. And in that process too, in offering and being of service, I there was a point where I felt burned out. I felt like I was working a lot, and it was that I was at a point of imbalance within myself. And I was like really sick once, and maybe about a year and a half ago, I was really sick, and I was in bed, and I had this fever, and I just like I got this message that the reason why I felt so imbalanced was because I was not living like in accordance with my womb, like the cycles that she moves through, and that in turn affect the way that I perceive the world and show up in the world. And so I started really living this lifestyle of being like aware of what phase I was in week to week, and started applying that to the way that I work. And so I would, it was a very intimate process of like learning how to read her language and be able to foresee and live my life with the awareness of the different phases that I moved through. And so that is a little bit about how I kind of like, I got turned on to this work. And so everything that I share are processes that I've tried, and that have really served me. And this has actually been the biggest thing that has provided for me the most relief and the most like intimate sense of self-knowing. And so I'll just go into a little bit about like what the phases are. And the way that I like to explain the menstrual cycle is that it's a journey through creativity, essentially. And every month we have a certain amount of creative energy that runs through our bodies. And the menstrual cycle itself can be split up into two different like yin and yang aspects. One which is much more extroverted, like one half is more extroverted, the more yang aspect of the cycle, which is characterized with the follicular phase and ovulation phase, or the pre-ovulation phase and ovulation phase. And then the more yin aspect of the cycle, where it's premenstrual phase and menstrual phase. And these are the more like introverted, deeper, darker aspects of the cycle. And so the way that energy moves through us is like it dictates like what are our abilities and our creativity, what flavor of creativity we are in week to week. And so there's what else can I say about it? There's the way that I like to explain each phase is to the women that I work with is by describing each phase in correlation with an archetypal energy. And so in our journey, in our monthly cycle, we essentially move through different states of consciousness. And what I see with a lot of women is that they move through these states unknowingly. And particularly around the premenstrual time, it can be really disorienting for a lot of women, because these are more premenstrual and menstrual time can be really disorienting, because these are the more yin, unknown, like feeling oriented phases of the cycle. And so a lot of our culture and what we value in our society doesn't really hold space for us to be in that unknown. And so I see all the time that there's women that go through these premenstrual and menstrual phases and feel, really low and feel like question everything about themselves and their lives and their place in the world. And I think, it's mostly just because people don't know, like women don't know that they're going through this process and they aren't taught. And so what the awareness of the cycle really does is it just builds a sense of self-trust so that like, no matter what is going on around you, and you have this intimate understanding of what your inner landscape is doing, so that you can lead from a place of authenticity. And oftentimes what I like to say is that, it can feel like going up, like really living by the wisdom of the cycle. It can feel like you're going up spiral mountain, seeing the same things over and over again, but with a different relationship. You just start building a relationship with these aspects of yourself that come up and are accentuated when you move through each phase. And so there's just this, I keep hearing the word union, right? Like you're in communion with yourself because you understand how the current of creative life force energy can move through you, and on a more practical level, how to put that into actionable, like clear, what's the word, like trackable ways. Like you can actually, take all of this deep emotional, spiritual understanding and be able to ground it into your everyday actions. So it's the cycle, like following the cycle for me really feels empowering in a lot of ways. It feels like I get to be a full human. Like it's like holistic, just holistic woman support. And I feel that it's like one of the most valuable tools that a woman can refer to be able to build deeper trust with herself and learn to lead from a place of embodiment, right? Because it's a path of embodiment to listen so closely to the rhythms of the womb. So yeah, I feel so warm talking about it because it's been a really big game changer for me. And I just love sharing this message with everyone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share with us the archetypes in each phase of the cycle again?
Sure.
Yeah.
So there are 4 archetypes in the cycle. And the first phase can be likened to the maiden or virgin archetype. And when I say virgin, I don't mean in the modern sense. I mean in the older sense, the older meaning of the word. That means a woman that is whole unto herself. And so this maiden energy, like the creative energy that's available to us in the maiden phase, which is the follicular phase or pre-ovulation phase, is one of mental creativity, right? And so there's the spiritual gift of this phase is alignment. And the reason why that is because in this phase you tend to you know what your direction is, and physically what's happening, your body is experiencing a resurgence of dynamic energy after having your period. You're experiencing a sort of springtime inside of your body. And so what that means for a woman's attitude and mood and energy is that she has this ability to self-direct herself. She feels self-confident, self-sufficient. And this is when our like masculine and feminine energy is the most balanced in ourselves, because we're able to see the big picture and plan ahead. And so the archetypal energy for that one is, I feel, Virgin feels like a really good encapsulation of that energy of, just a self-sufficient woman, an independent woman, an interdependent woman, I should say, and that, has her sights set on what she would like to do. And oftentimes we tend to be kind of impatient when things aren't going at the pace that we're going at because we're picking up. And so, there's a lot of fun, creative mental energy that we could put to use there. And then the ovulation phase, the archetypal energy for that is the mother phase. And her spiritual gift of the archetype is devotion. And when we think of mothers, we think of a physical, like a mother with a child. But this energy is also available to us with our projects and our ideas. And we can, the reason that devotion is the spiritual gift of this phase is because our ego is just naturally subdued around this time, which makes us super compassionate to women and very nurturing and very flexible. And we feel really light and we feel very sexy, and all these ultra feminine, qualities about us are really heightened around this time. And so this makes us better able to nurture our projects, nurture our relationships, nurture our children, if we have them. And so, but that energy of mother can be shared in so many different ways to feed so many aspects of our life, even if we have children or we don't. So there's a lot that I really love about ovulation phase. This is also the time when women tend to say to themselves that this is how they always are, like this is who they really are. And it's kind of I always like going through my ovulation phase with a sense of non-attachment, because now I know better. Like, all throughout my month, I'm me all the time. But in any case, women tend to unconsciously refer to that as their baseline of like being. And so then we move into the more darker phases of the menstrual cycle. Premenstrual phase, which can be likened to the archetypes of the wild woman or the queen. And when we think of the wild woman, we think of the woman that's really bold and, lives against the grain, has these bold opinions and thoughts about herself and her world. And she also doesn't have any care for, linear timelines and things like this. And also, one of the reasons why I say that there's two archetypes that are present there is because that's what's been, I've really been sitting with this for a while. There's this energy of the queen, and when we think of the queen, she like knows what she wants, and she isn't afraid to be able to make that known. She knows who she is, and she knows that she's being in service to something that's greater. And so there's just this sense of like owning her own power and really claiming her sovereignty. And the reason why these archetypes are correlated with this phase is because the spiritual gift of this phase is initiation. And the reason I say that is because there is a lot that comes up for women around this time. Like I said before, it tends to be really disruptive for women, right? Especially if they're, they experience PMS and that sort of thing. And on the more energetic level, and on the mental level, what happens is that the subconscious mind is at the forefront at this phase. So all of the, we hold every belief that we hold about ourselves and the world lives in the subconscious mind. And so if a woman has, been imprinted with negative beliefs about herself and the world, that tends to be comes up to the forefront. And so the job of the subconscious mind is to look for validation, for proof that something is true, and look for evidence for whatever belief or whatever it is that it's holding. And so sometimes that can be, it can look for validation for things that are really negative. And there's a lot of truth that comes online around this time for us as well. We start to see all the things that we feel are wrong, or not wrong, what's the word, that are not in alignment with our highest truth. And so sometimes that truth can be really uncomfortable. It can be really frustrating if, you hold this vision for our life, and the decisions that we are making are not matching up to that, and or the relationships that we have are not supporting that. And so this is a time when a lot of women get fiery, like that wild woman comes out, and she sometimes burns the people around her. And so she has a lot of energy. I mean, she has a lot of power to provide for us, this wild woman archetype. Because we have the opportunity to bring all of those darker hidden aspects of our psyche into the light, so that we could claim them and own them and turn them into gifts, right? Turn it into the gift of the queen. And so the premenstrual phase is probably the best, the most juiciest phase for me to talk about, because I just, in my own journey, it's been a really big point of I just see fire, right? Like fire clarifies, it purifies, and the premenstrual phase is always kind of fiery, and I love talking about it. And then we move into the menstrual phase, and that can be correlated to the archetype of the wise old woman. And when you think of the wise old woman, she's a keeper of wisdom for her community, and she is a light for her community to be able to, be a well of wise woman wisdom, and she is also the gatekeeper between these, the living, the world and death, essentially. And because of that, the veil is thin, so to speak. And she has more of a connection. She has a stronger connection to the divine, and therefore a lot of what she does in the world reflects that connection. And so it's not, she's not project oriented. She's not, career woman oriented. She's just in a state of deep communion with the unknown, essentially. And the spiritual gift of this phase is death or rebirth. And I think there's a lot of power in being able to surrender into the unknown. And the menstrual phase really is a big space for that. It's a big purge. It's a big release of, into the unknown. And all that we knew in the previous month about ourselves is now coming undone. And so what I like to say to my women is that you're already going through this deeply spiritual process. You're going through this deeply transformational process in your month. And it just making that process conscious can really help you to be able to release, old patterns during your menstrual phase. And also you can release any old attachments that you had around this time, because your body is naturally shedding. It's naturally releasing for you. And so you can just make that process conscious by taking it, by following it, and also offering up, all of those parts of yourself that you feel, or that you're getting this intuition to know that they're not going to serve you in the next life or in the next cycle, right? Because we have this opportunity to make ourselves anew every cycle. And so that's why it's a death and also a rebirth. And in that menstrual phase, there's also just a lot of our abilities that are alive for us there are, we're naturally in a meditative state. And I've been noticing a lot in my own experience that I just feel like I'm in a walking meditation in my experience, in just relating to the world. And I feel this sort of gentleness, and, for other women, it might be very painful and all these other things. And I have some ideas about why that may be. But we're naturally in a meditative state, and we can see the big picture, just like the wise old woman, like we know our place in the world, and we've had experiences that have led us to gather all of the wisdom that we have about ourselves and the world. And the veils are thin, and so we get a lot of intuitions about, the state of the world and where it's going, and how to be able to let go of certain things. And this is also when we're really emotional. Like, I actually really enjoy the sensitivity of the menstrual phase, because I feel it all, right? You feel it all around this time. Even the most unsuspecting, like, meme or quote or something can really strike you, and you can feel it all. And there's just this sensitivity that's alive. It's just feminine power. It's just pure feminine power that's alive there. Yeah.
Oh, it's so amazing. I was taking notes. I'm like, yes, I want to remember which one's for which. It's so interesting, because just this morning I was thinking about, I'm leading a women's circle on Saturday, and I was journaling, because part of it is looking at different faces of the divine feminine. So I was writing, mother, maiden, crone, and I thought of two more, and one was the queen, which I work a lot with that archetype, and then the other was Kali, which could be the wild woman.
Yes.
And I had never made the link that actually the queen and the wild woman are two faces of the same coin. That's so cool. Because it's true. It's like the wild woman and Kali energy I see is really there to help us set boundaries. We might feel rage or feel like a lot of energy, but it's there to really help us be in our alignment. And it's what we do with that energy. Can we hold that energy as the queen, and, not place blame or judgment or all of that outside of ourselves, but really take responsibility and, bless the people who brought us into that rage or whatever it was, but then to use it in a way to come into deeper alignment. And I had never linked these with the menstrual cycle. So that's really interesting to see as well, and it makes me feel so much better just about being a woman, and knowing that, the past week I was in my old wise woman phase, and I did not want to leave the house. And I've just been I did not want to do much work. I've kind of just been nesting and meditating and staying warm. And I could feel now my ental energy is starting to pick up again, and wanting to plan and look at the next month, and it's shifting into that maiden. But what a relief to see, I don't need to be on high productivity all the time. And that's a beautiful message. I want more women to know that. And I imagine you do too. That's such a beautiful piece.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I love that you just shared about Kali and the queen being connected, or like that wild woman queen dynamic. And it's usually in the face of the, like, in women's mysteries and goddess teaching traditions, there's like the faces of the dark goddess tend to be the most shunned or like less embraced, but there's a lot of power there. And so this is why I love talking about premenstrual phase, because it's so like notorious and gets a bad rap. But yeah, like you said, it's like, it's an opportunity, to be able to like really own all of our projections and own all of these things that come up for us, and yeah, not place blame and just turn it into like this self-fueling fire. So I love talking about it.
Yeah, it really is. It's a source of power, source of our using that energy and any of our triggers and things that come up at that time to use it, fuel it towards what we really want to be and how we want to show up in the world. Wow, cool. Thank you for that. So where do we go from here? I feel like that's just like so much. Where do you feel like is the area that's your growing edge, or like the place where you are on your path, where has been your initiations or your learning with living in alignment with your menstrual cycle?
Wow, I love that. What's been my edge there? For me, relationships are so important. Like it's one of my core values, like really doing relationships right. And so for me, I think the biggest edge for me is in my own, like, walking this path of really embracing my cycle. It's placed a lot of responsibility on me to be able to wield my power in a way that also, is supportive to my relationships and supportive in to the world around me. So the edge for me has been in like letting people into my experience of what that's like. And so now I think it's been my edge the last at the beginning, and it's starting to get a little bit better, and just being able to share with someone like what's really going on with me, even down to like where I am in my cycle. Like, I'm in my premenstrual phase right now, so my patience tends to be really low around this time, and so letting people into my experience in my relationships has been a bit of an edge for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is it. I think an edge for many of us. Mm-hmm. I've been thinking lately about vulnerability and how when we share ourselves, often we do create more intimacy. Mm-hmm. And that is also very, very hard to let people in. Mm-hmm. And especially, just running a business. This is a good question. I would love to hear from you. Like, what is, where do you draw the line, around being vulnerable and also knowing that, like, there are some things you want to stay private about?
With in like sharing
yourself publicly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I'm of this thought that, how we do one thing is how we do everything. And so I'm like, for me, one of my biggest, like my greatest work of art is being human. And it's like my journey, that this journey that I really take pride in, like just really doing life, like as the most enlivened, heart-centered, just passionate human beings and compassionate human beings that I can be, human being that I can be. And so for me, when I share, it's when I share like really intimate details about my life, I do it so that I can be able to grow and be witnessed as a human being, first and foremost. And then also release this idea that I have to show up any other way than how I am. And that has actually been the greatest healing for me in me sharing. And there are times where I experience, like, I have this like thing in my mind, like, oh, should I share that? Because it feels really scary sometimes. It feels really like vulnerable, like how you're describing. It does feel vulnerable to be able to share. And there's been times where I wondered, oh, like, should I share that? Because, I'm a business owner and I'm serving these people, and like, how will that look in, these people's eyes? But what ends up happening is that more people are attracted to work with me because of that, because I'm actually, because they can see I'm human, right? And even though I have, expertise in one area, and that by doing that, they know that I'm always growing as well, and that I'm also on this journey, this human journey as well. And so this idea of leadership for me has been changing a lot, right? Like, what does it mean to be a leader? Does it mean that we're like this strong pillar, like unwavering pillar of like strength all the time? Or is it also soft? Can it be soft and, intimate and feeling oriented? And so this is actually one of the greatest things that I like, questions I like to ask myself, like, what role does vulnerability have to play in new leadership, this new era of leadership? I feel that's like, it's an emergent, it's just like it's happening through us as we're doing it. So, it's interesting because the more that I share online of myself, it creates more closeness. People feel like they know me a lot more, and therefore they feel a sense of trust and bond. And also I share because I know that, it could serve somebody else's path as well, like the things that I discover. So what I share, ends up being an offering in a sense, I'm sharing this, and, in doing that, I trust that it can serve your path so that you can be able to walk, in the way that that feels good for you, and do life, with a greater sense of trust. And so I love sharing for that reason. And the line gets really blurred, and I kind of like it. I kind of like that gray area.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it creates a level of closeness with the people that you want to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us what's coming up in your business. What are you excited about?
Yay. So I am actually, I'm so excited to be sharing a 6-month program with women that I'm opening myself up to hold space for. And I've been visioning this program for about a year and a half now. And I just I'm so grateful that I'm getting to share it, and to support women in this way that I've always wanted to. And the program is called Follow Your Own Rhythm. And it's a program to help you to live in alignment with your menstrual flow, so that your service and your work in the world can come from this embodied place. And it's come from my own exploration in entrepreneurship, right? Of like living this way, and trying it for myself, and seeing that I've been able to optimize the way that I show up and share my work in the world. So it's a 6-month program, and there's already I have about 6 women signed up now, and I'm so excited because I'm just that much closer to having this container for women to the full container that I would like. There's about 6 spots left, and so it's a 6-month program, and we just go deep into this menstrual wisdom month by month. And also it comes with guest speakers that I'm going to have that, I think you're actually kind of familiar with some of the women that I'm going to be having. Of course, it's a beautiful sister community that we have. So there's a lot of juiciness in store for that group, and I just can't wait to share more about it.
Yay. Yay. When does that start?
Oh, yes. It starts March 28th and ends in September. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think we'll have this episode out by mid-March. So
cool.
That would be great.
Yay.
Well, wonderful. It's been such a joy to just hear more about your works, especially hear about the archetypes, to go deeper into that sense of feminine embodiment. One last question before we go into any closing words, but what do you feel is the role of a woman's desire in her actualizing her life? I would love to hear that. It's something to touch on.
Oh, I love talking about this. To me, when I speak of a woman's desire, I speak to soul desire, not just the base desires, right? Like food, sex, water, all these things. I'm talking about soul, the soul desires. And desire for me is is the kindling to a great fire that can burn. And it's a catalyst to help us to be able to actualize ourselves, because when we get that intuition or that feeling in our body that lights up when we think about us sharing that workshop, or sharing that the work that we want to do with the world, or create the lives that we want to create, when we feel that sense of essentially turn on and light in our bodies, that really is so powerful, because it serves as a guidance system to for you to follow that thread, because in that journey, the person that you start off as is not the person that ends up with the manifestation of whatever it is. And really, I feel that it's sacred for that reason, because it has a capacity. Desire has this capacity to shape us into the beings that we are here to be. And so I just that relationship also is really profound. And in my work with a lot of women, I've realized that there's a lot of disowned desire and unknown desires that women have that I end up working with them through. And so it's been one of the biggest pillars for this divine feminine leadership work that I've been able to share, just really strengthening that connection that woman has with this deep soul desire. So I love it. It's for that reason, it's such a big catalyst for evolution.
Yes. Yeah. I think of that with some of the desires I've had in the last few years, publishing a book. I don't know why that desire was there, but it came in and it was so strong. And I could see what it led me to wasn't necessarily about being this big bestseller on New York Times and all of that. But the learning journey that came and the evolution that came from that desire was so profound. I think with any desire, moving to a new house, which I just did too, it's this is allowing me to step into more of my greatness. And that's really what desire is here to help, to show us what we're capable of. And it doesn't, for a long time, I think I did hold a little bit I shouldn't want that, or, I should just be grateful with what I have, but turning that around and saying, no, I can have this if I want. And Now, I have to take full responsibility for wanting this. And what is that going to take?
Right. Right. Yeah, because like I think where people get tripped up is turning like being attached to an outcome of receiving the end result of the desire in a certain way. Like, just having this fixed sense, but really the magic is in the journey. That's where I like, that's where I love supporting women in just like really being in that space of like enjoying the journey of fulfilling this desire, because really you could take a lifetime, like if your desire is to really live unconditional love, like you could take a whole lifetime exploring that. And I think that's just so beautiful, because everything from there can be just food for your soul to be able to evolve. And I truly believe that that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, thank you so much, Maga, for being here. Do you have any closing words for us before I'll close this call with a little prayer?
Let me feel into that.
Yeah.
I just have this deep wish and deep prayer that every woman that's listening to this podcast know that she's a deeply radiant queen, and that she in some way today find some way to acknowledge that in herself. And that's my prayer and my wish.
So let's just breathe that in and coming back to our hearts and our center. This beautiful wish we all see and become our most sovereign version of ourselves, stepping into that energy of the queen, holding our power, using it in great service, giving back. I invite everyone who's listening to take a deep breath, to bring into their heart whatever it is that wants to stay with them and continue on their journey throughout their day. May we each become the greatest embodiment of our higher selves, the beings we came here to be. May we live in alignment with our wombs. May we listen to the rhythms of our own body. And thank you to everyone listening. And thank you again, Maga, for your wisdom. We bow with gratitude. Namaste.
Namaste. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to our show today. We would love to hear what you think. Take a moment to hop on over to iTunes and leave us a review. We'd be so grateful to receive it. Until next time, namaste.